Okay, here's the thing. Why was Susan Pevensie the one who lost her faith in the Chronicles of Narnia? A lot of people bring that up. A lot of people say that it's sexist, and yes, I just made an entire video about it, but when I say I made an entire video about it, I really just reposted the entire video that I made about it 3 years ago. So anyways, Susan Pevensie is the one by the end of the Chronicles of Narnia who loses her faith in Narnia. She's the one who no longer believes. She's the one who no longer goes to the meetings with everyone who does believe in Narnia. She's the one who kind of mocks them for believing in it. And when I say mocks, I mean they bring up Narnia to her and she goes, oh, it's so cool that you guys are still like believing in that like little game that we used to play. That's so funny. I'm not gonna play that game anymore. And we have a bunch of the girls and the adults, specifically not her siblings, not her family, judging Susan for this, okay? So we have Jill and we have Polly, and they are being bitchy about the fact that Susan no longer believes in Narnia. But Peter, Edmund, and Lucy are not bitchy. They just say Susan is no longer a friend of Narnia. And why was it Susan? Why wasn't it Peter? Why wasn't it Edmund? Why wasn't it Lucy? And the answer is actually, I think, really simple. Susan is the one who, A, had to see Narnia to believe in Narnia. Okay? Susan is the one who would not believe anything until she saw it for herself. But even when she saw it for herself, even when she was actively in Narnia, even when she really truly knew she was a Narnian, even when she knew what the right thing to do was in helping the Narnians, she was still thinking about going home. She was still considering their family back home. She was still thinking about the fact that she had to bring her family home. Why wasn't Peter thinking about this? Why wasn't Edmund thinking about this? Why wasn't Lucy thinking about this? Because A, Lucy is the only one in all of Narnia who knew the entire time, okay? It was never going to be Lucy who lost her faith, because Lucy believed before anyone else believed her. People in her family tried to gaslight her. I mean, not really gaslight, but like, this is a little girl who says that she was in a closet and went into a completely different world. And she's 6. So the people in her family, these siblings, the older siblings, because she is the baby, were like, you're confused. You're very confused. You're a young child. We're going through a war. We're in a completely new place. Of course, it feels like the closet is another world. But it's not. You're just a little silly. And then Edmund goes in. Edmund is the second to go in, and Edmund gets cursed by the queen, okay? People forget about the fact that Edmund gets cursed by the queen. It's not just that he gave his family up for some treats. It's not just that he gave Mr. Tumnus up for a couple of fucking treats. No, those Turkish delights were under a spell put on by the queen. First there was nothing, and then there were Turkish delights that she made out of snow. This is a wand. She made them out of snow. She had Edmund eat them. And once Edmund started eating them, in the book, it very specifically says that unless the queen had taken them away from him, he would have eaten them until he died. He never would have felt full. He never would have been able to stop. He never would have had the self-control because they were enchanted. They were cursed. They cursed him. So the queen is like, bring me your family and you'll get more Turkish delight. And Edmund is like, I will bring you my family so I will get more Turkish delight. And he thinks that the queen is a great, wonderful person. He's not going to believe the 6-year-old sister that he has. So Edmund gets taken in by the snake, okay? This is a book about religion. It's very heavy-handed in some parts while also not being heavy-handed in others. Edmund gets taken in by the snake. The queen is the snake, and she's literally like, do this for me. Bite the apple, be mine. And he does, because he's also the second youngest kid. Edmund slowly but surely learns how to be better and how to be more a part of his family and a better ruler and a better person, and how to not be taken over by people like the queen. But people don't think about the fact that Edmund had to fight tooth and nail from the point of meeting the queen to the point of Aslan saving his ass to not believe all of the queen's lies. And a huge part of that is because he's the youngest brother. He's the third sibling, and he's got Peter and he's got Susan, and they're not only telling him what he should be and how he should be better to Lucy, who's his younger sister, so there's nothing that he can do that is right, but he also has Peter, who's like this perfect older brother that, yeah, he looks up to, but who also tells him that he's a numpty every chance that he gets, as an older brother does. Edmund is spiteful. So Edmund fights with everything that he has to become a true believer and a true child of Adam and Eve, a true child of Narnia, a true friend of Narnia. Edmund's never going to be the one who stops believing, because Edmund also had to fight so hard to believe. Lucy's fighting to get people to believe her and believe the thing that she has seen. Edmund is fighting to be able to believe the thing that she has seen. And then we have Peter. And Peter is the High King of Narnia. He's the one who tells Aslan, I don't think that I can be a leader. I don't know if I'll be good at it. And Aslan goes, and that's exactly why you're the kid I choose for this, okay? Peter is also fighting for Narnia every chance that he gets. Peter is also the sibling who believes pretty quickly. They get to Narnia, he's like, okay, so I have to take charge because I'm the older brother. And he is. He's the oldest sibling. He's the oldest brother. And he has to take charge because of this, in a different way than Susan. Susan is thinking about how to take charge and keep them together as a unit and get them back home to Earth. Peter goes, we are in this, we are here, we have to do the right thing here. He's much more willing to believe in the magic. He's much more willing to believe in this new world because it's easier for him, because of his personality, kind of, because of how trusting and good he is. A lot of people, I hate J.K. Rowling with all my heart and soul. She has she has proven herself to be the worst possible human being you can possibly have grown up loving with all your heart and soul, okay? So, when I mention Harry Potter in this next part, please know that I don't fuck with that turf. That being said, there's a meme that goes around often, or at least it went around a lot on Tumblr back when J.K. Rowling seemed like a pretty okay person to fuck with. Not so much anymore. And in that meme, it says that the four Pevensie siblings are like what J.K. Rowling, turf, based the Hogwarts founders off of. And they made Peter Godric Gryffindor, and they made Edmund Salazar Slytherin, and they made Susan Rowena Ravenclaw, and they made Lucy Helga Hufflepuff. That's incorrect for many reasons. But the biggest one is that if there is a character in Chronicles of Narnia who's going to get compared to a lion at any point in time, which is often, she gets compared to lions often, it's Lucy! Lions are Lucy's thing. The lion chose Lucy. Lucy is the only one who ever believes in Aslan consistently forever, okay? And I'd like to make that clear. Lucy also is told by Aslan, if you were any braver, you would be a lioness. Lucy is known as the bravest of those four siblings because she's 6 and she's going into this war with her whole heart and soul, okay? Edmund, we're going through this entire thing now. Edmund is actually brilliant. Once he becomes the King of Narnia, once we learn more about them as adults in the later books, once we learn about who they are when they were adults in the later books, we learn that Edmund is the planner. Edmund is good at chess. Edmund is amazing at planning and considering a war and thinking about how the pieces have to move. He's good at strategy and he's good at talking to people. Edmund is a Ravenclaw. He's brilliant. Peter is a goddamn Hufflepuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But literally, even what he's known as, I can't think of like the actual thing that he's known as in Narnia, but he's King Peter, like the Great, and he's not afraid of toil, which is a big thing with Hufflepuffs. Peter is kind. He is a kind ruler. He is a soft ruler. He's not ruling with his fist. He's not ruling with this great amount of bravery. He's ruling with his heart, which I would argue is a Hufflepuff thing. Susan is the Slytherin. There's nothing wrong with being a Slytherin, but Susan is the Slytherin. Slytherin. She is very thoughtful in a different way than Edmund, okay? In a different way from Peter. She is constantly thinking about her family's best interests and what she thinks her family's best interests are. Susan is the one who is constantly fighting to do the selfish thing and bring her family of children back home to the place that's technically safer, even though it's also in a war, than Narnia, which is under a very different kind of war, a magical war where she doesn't know if they'll ever be able to leave or ever be able to get out of it. Susan is a Slytherin, and Susan is also, because of these things, where she is constantly thinking from the point of view of the mother of the family. She is the Wendy darling, where she's mom. She's bossing people around, but she's doing it to make sure that everyone's safe. She's making sure that they're eating their vegetables. She's making sure that they're doing their homework. Susan is that sibling. So, yes, she's in Narnia, and yes, she believes in Narnia when she's there, and yes, she believes in Narnia when they're kids, and when she's able to go to Narnia. But when she gets older, there's a lot of backstory and backlore that I don't fully know about Narnia that people will tell me. So from my understanding, Peter goes to live with the professor at some point. Susan doesn't. Susan's alone, okay? Edmund and Lucy have each other. They have one or two more Narnia trips before they are no longer welcome back to Narnia. Susan stops being welcome back to Narnia after her second point being there. And it's not because she's no longer welcome in Narnia. She's always a friend of Narnia. But it's no longer her time to travel to Narnia. The next time that she's going to go to Narnia is when she dies. Susan's never going to be able to believe in Narnia after she's gone from Narnia. And it's not because of this sexism. People always try to say that C.S. Lewis is sexist for it, and it's not because she's like, it's so hard to put this. It's not because of sexism. Because C.S. Lewis based Susan's faith journey off of himself because he had his own loss of faith in his life. And it's not because C.S. Lewis hates women. C.S. Lewis actually writes his women very equal to his men. He really considers his characters, and he does a very good job with them. It is because the Tim Allen Santa Claus movie, seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. Susan had to see to believe. Everyone else, once they believed, they saw it everywhere. Everyone else in her family, once they knew that Narnia existed, they were going to know that Narnia existed for the rest of their lives, especially because everyone else in the family got to be together and work together. They were closer in ages, they were closer to each other. Susan was off on a point. Her brother, Peter, yeah, he still believed in Narnia, but he was a man. Susan is a woman in a society that by the time it's 1942, 1943, when they go to Narnia for the first time, 1945 maybe when they go to Narnia for the second time. So by the time that she is an adult, it's the 1950s. There has been a recession. Women are expected to be completely different human beings than they were even 10 years ago. 10 years before, when she was a child, women were in the workforce. Women were working. In the 1950s, women are no longer expected to work. Women are in fact expected to marry, to have children, to bring children back into the world that had so many of their boys and girls taken out by this terrible world war. Susan is 22 when her entire family dies. She has gone to school. She is considering getting married. She is there's a line that I think either Polly or Jill says about her being obsessed with nylons and red lipstick, which when I was at 10 and read this book, I want to be into nylons and red lipstick. That's going to be my thing. I want to be into nylons and red lipstick. Am I into nylons? No. Am I into red lipstick? Yes. Let's discuss the historical context of this, though. Nylons in the war were impossible to come by. women would draw the line of nylons up their leg in pen to make it look like they were still well-to-do enough to have nylons. So once the war was over, and once England started bringing money in again, and once people were able to celebrate and live in a world without war for a hot second, at least without this huge war, once that was able to happen, nylons were something that you could enjoy. Clothing was something that you could enjoy. Red lipstick was something that women started wearing to say Hitler. Because he didn't like his women in red lipstick. So Susan is living in a different world than any of her siblings because Susan's 22. She, I think, is 12 when the first book happens, okay? She's 6 years older than Lucy, let's say. I could be wrong about the age. You can tell me in the comments. Please be nice about telling me that I'm wrong. I don't know the exact ages, okay? She's significantly older than Lucy. Lucy's not living the same life as her, and Lucy has also, again, never had trouble with her faith in the way that we have seen Susan have trouble with her faith. Because Susan has had to be the reasonable one. She has had to be the logical one. She has had to be the selfish one in that she's trying to make sure that her family stays together, is together, and can get back home. And yes, they forget that Earth exists for a very long time, and they grow up into their 30s and they become these human beings who have lived this entire life in this other world where they forget that their home even exists. She got to be a queen. She had every man in the world fighting for her, okay? People were fighting for her hand. The Horse and the Boy book has a section where Susan is almost kidnapped by a Tsar because it's a little racist. We all know it's a little racist. It was the 1950s, okay? It was a racist time. People forget this sometimes and go, it's unforgivable. It's not great. It's not awesome. It's not forgivable, but it's also a thing that we have to expect in these books. It's not good, but we have to know why it happened, okay? Susan almost gets kidnapped by this character, and she has to figure out how to run, and she's running with Tumnus, and we see that all of these people, all of these men want Susan. Susan is always going off of her looks, and that's not a bad thing, and that's not a sexist thing. It's actually very logical, I would say, that Susan's character specifically is the one who is beautiful, who is sought after, who is wanted. I also think it's logical that C.S. Lewis made it so that Susan Pevensie's character never gets together with a man, because technically she's always still going to be a child until they get older. So like when she's in Narnia that first time, they're not falling in love. They're not having people actually take them. They're not having people actually get married because they're going to go back to being 12-year-olds, and I think it's like 12-year-olds and 6-year-olds, and that can't happen. But Susan stopped being a fighter once the war was over. Susan became a queen and a diplomat, and she was the one who was doing these things and avoiding wars and avoiding fighting. The person who was willing to fight and to take the bow and arrow and to take the swords and to do all of these things and to wear the male shirts was Lucy. And also, I talk about Susan Pevensie a lot. I do. She's a fantastic character. I could talk about her for days. I would like to make it clear, Lucy Pevensie is one of my favorite characters ever written, ever created, and I love Lucy Pevensie significantly more than I love Susan Pevensie, because I am the Lucy Pevensie. I am the youngest of, older siblings who always told me I was a little silly for these stories that I made up. Lucy's my favorite. Just need to make that clear. But that being said, I will defend Susan and Susan's story to the death, because Susan's story is so important, it's so beautiful, it's so significant, because that struggle for faith, even though she saw Narnia, is something that so many people have. And that's kind of the point of this entire thing. I've had so many people on my last Susan Pevensie video comment that it doesn't make sense that Susan would struggle with her faith because she saw Narnia, she lived in Narnia, why would she struggle to believe in Narnia? She was 12! She was 12, and then she was 14 or 15, and then she was told she was never gonna get to go back. She was a child in a story that no adult in their right minds, except one professor who people always call a little kooky, believed. Susan not believing in Narnia anymore after she's no longer able to talk to every single person in her family about Narnia consistently and no longer has people that she can share this faith with consistently, this are going to tell you, if you ever try to tell them about something like that you are silly, that you are crazy, that you are wacko. So what, she's no longer able to consistently talk to her family about Narnia? The hurt is probably too much to know that you're not going to be able to go back there for a very long time. Aslan didn't say when, he just said that you're just not welcome back. And she can't talk to anyone about it. And her younger siblings still got to go twice more. Of course, Susan Pevensie stops believing in Narnia. Susan Pevensie is a ridiculously logical person who will also always do what is best for herself and her own health. And that's not a bad thing. That kind of selfishness isn't a bad trait. It's healthy. It's something that we applaud now. But Susan Pevensie, being the one who no longer... My mom decided to call and I cannot answer until I finish this because I can't stop yelling. Susan Pevensie, being the one who no longer believes in Narnia, makes perfect sense for her character, and I need people to understand that because I think it's such a beautiful story, and I think it's very, very important that we know two things. One, C.S. Lewis based his own faith journey on Susan Pevensie. Susan Pevensie got C.S. Lewis's faith journey. He struggled with believing in God, and then he became an author who only writes about God. And two, C.S. Lewis started the Chronicles of Narnia series because his niece, Lucy, wanted a fairy tale. Well, I don't know that much about him as a full person, but what I do know is those two things combined with the fact that this man writes women and he writes his female characters to all be different. I'm looking at you, Rick Riordan, who only knows how to write two kinds of girls, and none of them like other girls. Are like other girls. C.S. Lewis isn't doing the Susan Pevensie story to be sexist. He's doing the Susan Pevensie story to show that everyone at some point is going to struggle with faith depending on who they are. And also Narnia, again, I cannot emphasize this enough, is like an 8-person religion. That basically would seem like a cult to someone who's struggling with their belief system. They're believing in a talking lion who creates worlds. Of course you're gonna struggle with it. Okay, anyways, thank you. I have to go call my mom back now. I love you. Bye!